Beautiful as always. Thank you. All right. What are you? That's the title of my talk today. I decided to look a little bit at what and who we are and how we are in the world. This month is the beginning of Lent, and the first Sunday of Lent in our booklets, which if you haven't gotten one, there's some at the back of the room there. The excerpt that they are talking about is about Jesus letting go of human ego. And I read it, and I didn't like it. I don't know. It wasn't that I didn't like it, it was just not the perspective that I would have taken on what the ego is. Because so many times when I hear somebody talking about ego, I hear about, oh, well, we have to get rid of our ego. We have to, toss it out. We have to let it go. We edge God out through ego. And we want to get to that divine nature. But my understanding of unity principles is that we are both fully human and fully divine. So we kind of need our ego. We don't need it as much as I needed it this week, but we do need it. Our ego is defined as the part of the mind that mediates between the conscious and unconscious and is responsible for reality testing and a sense of personal identity. So an ego is who we are in our humanness. In metaphysics, ego is a conscious thinking subject. So our ego can be both healthy and unhealthy in the aspects of who we are. When we have a balanced ego, we're able to do a lot more to raise ourselves up in consciousness toward our divinity, right? But when we're stuck in unhealthiness, when we're stressed, when we blow things out of proportion, I don't know anything about that at all. There are, those are the things that we want to be concerned with. So, I talked a little bit about stress. When we are stressed, we have this part of our brain called the amygdala. And it's the part of the brain that helps us process and react to strong emotions. So when we're in that, when we're in ego and we're overdrawn in ego, when we're overflowing in the essence of who we are and our grandioseness of ourselves, that amygdala is sending out chemicals. And those chemicals can narrow our perspective and puts the ego more in charge of what's going on. So I'll give you an example. I had an interesting conversation with a friend, and it ended up being blown way out of proportion. I somehow got triggered by some things that were said, and I freaked out. And I love how when I decide on doing a talk that God gives me some chances to practice what I'm going to preach. Because it was pretty bad for me. I felt pretty anxious. I called another friend and tried to calm myself down, but I actually lost the ability to function that day because I was just so uptight and so angry and frustrated and sad. And I let my ego take control of that day. And it was not a good thing. I won't give you the details because that's not important. But what you need to know is that I am human, just like everybody else. And so I have those days where I am not fulfilling my divine purpose. And that was one of them. So if you have a healthy ego, the healthy ego's job is to protect you from real world threats. But this disagreement that I had with a friend, with a coworker, didn't have that much threat to it. It was that I got triggered and all this old stuff came up. You know, that old, the old messages, I'm not good enough, or people don't like me, or I can't do anything right. Not that I have those thoughts, I'm just using those as examples. Those kinds of things can bubble up, and that chemicalization can occur, and it creates distress. So during Lent, one of the things that they talk about in the booklet is about letting go and letting God. So trying to release any resentment, trying to release any anxiety, letting go of those errored thoughts that we might have about ourselves and others. Learning to forgive are all part of what we do during the Lenten season in unity. I think it's a very important liturgical time of the year, even if we are not, full practicing Christianity. I think it's still relevant because it reminds us of all the things that can go wrong in our lives that we want to make right and that we want to prepare for. So the Revealing Word, and if you don't know what the Revealing Word is, it's the book that Charles wrote about words that show up in the Bible and what they mean metaphysically. The Revealing Word says that the ego is man, and by reason of his divinity, he makes and remakes as he wills. The ego itself is possessed of nothing. It is a mere ignorant child of innocence floating in the mind of being, but through the door of its consciousness must pass all the treasures of God. And then it talks about an adverse ego, or what I would consider to be the unhealthy ego. The adverse ego is when the ego attaches itself to sense consciousness. And in Charles's definition, sense consciousness is our humanness, because we use all of our senses for connection in the human world. So it builds up within us. And it is adverse ego that causes all the trouble in the world. Its selfishness and greed make men grovel in the mire of materiality when they might soar in the heavens of spirituality. It's a lot to take in, right? We're groveling in the mire of materiality. But that's kind of where I felt stuck. I was stuck in, I'm right, and this is the way it, and I couldn't do what I wanted to do because I was having this disagreement. I couldn't get through my day. I couldn't work on my homework. I was like, I ate, because, when I get really stressed out, food is my comfort. So I like to eat. I don't recommend it highly. For anyone that, wants to lose weight or anything. But that's where I was. That's what I felt. And so that's, kind of where I was for a little while. Now, there's lots of things that you can do to help yourself. And I have some tools that I'm going to share with you that help you to kind of realign yourself and realign your ego. But my point in talking about this today is to talk about the spiritual ego. And Charles Fillmore says that the spiritual ego is the true self. It is the individualized center of God consciousness. It is the I am, or the conscious identity. And so that's the part of the ego that I think is the healthy ego, the one that we need to help us build up to our Christ consciousness. Now, you may have heard of Reverend Doctor, Reverend Doctor, I don't know which one, Paul Hasselbeck. He wrote this book. Well, he wrote many books, but this one's called Power Up, and it's the 12 Powers Revisited. And it's talking about the accelerated abilities within us. And what I like about his definitions is that he gives you the good and the bad, like the what could go wrong and then what could be over-exaggerated or underdeveloped or overdeveloped. And so he's talking about life, and the power of life has a lot to do with our ego, because our ego is our humanness, right? So we want to have a healthy ego to be able to use our faculty of life. I also found that Judas, the Apostle Judas, that represents life in the 12 powers of man, also represents the ego in this scenario. And during Lent, we know during that last week of Lent, it was Judas who turned Jesus over to the authorities to have him go to jail, and ultimately, was crucified. But without Judas, that would never have happened. And so we don't see that, it's not healthy. That aspect of Judas was the most unhealthy part of what he did. He was just so sure that what he was doing was the right thing. He was definitely living in his ego and not living from his Christ self. So Paul Hasselbeck says that life is the ability to energize, to vitalize, enliven, and make whole. And from the ego, it is the ability to, I just read that, the ability to energize, vitalize, I can't read. I gotta take my glasses off, I guess. Enliven and make whole based on our senses, thoughts, and feelings and beliefs. So we use life to energize worthwhile projects and activities and to manifest healing in our bodies. Conversely, life can be used to energize troublesome projects like robbing a bank or manifesting an illness. So he talks about the underdeveloped life. Underdeveloped life results in people who have little energy to accomplish anything. And that's how I felt that day when I was all in my ego. I couldn't accomplish a thing. So often, people with an underdeveloped life faculty are apathetic or may run into problems with illnesses or diseases. And then he says that an overdeveloped life results in people who demonstrate a frenetic kind of energy, coming across as hectic, feverish, and even a bit chaotic. I felt that also that day, that I had way more going on than I could really get through, and I was in the midst of all of that chaos. So I was both underdeveloped and overdeveloped at the same time, which to me was pretty interesting. So what we want to do with those 12 powers, with all of the 12 powers, not just life, but with all of them, is to maintain a balance, right? A healthy way to be able to be in the world. And our 12 powers are part of our human consciousness. So we want to use those 12 powers to the best of their ability. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, Imelda Shanklin, who is one of the contemporaries of Charles Fillmore, says this about the ego and the personal nature of our lives. She says that the personal is the scene, the body, the conduct, the situation, and the impersonal is the unseen, the spirit, the mind, the revelation, and that our intention translates the unseen into the seen and makes the what of life become the who of life. What that means to me is that we are translating what we know, what we don't know, what is in our unconsciousness, and we're bringing it forward into our consciousness, and that is what makes us who we are. So during that day, when I was having a really not so very good day, my unconscious had brought forth a lot of stuff, like I said, stuff that I didn't need to have, that it was unnecessary. And I only know that now because I was able to finally calm down and was finally able to get myself into a resting position. But it's really hard to do that when you're in the moment, right? I mean, somebody says something or does something that, just really irks you or makes you wish you could smack them. Sorry, I'm not allowed to talk about violence, I guess. But it's true. Sometimes you just feel like that's going to happen, and but that's not the way you should behave. So don't do it. I don't condone that. But I was listening, or I was not listening. I was reading a book by Cindy Wigglesworth. And her book is on spiritual intelligence. It's called SQ21. And she talks about the 21 skills to raise your consciousness and to develop your spiritual intelligence. And many of you might know that we have an emotional intelligence as well, and people talk about that a lot. But she kind of went one step further and went into a spiritualness of it, and I really like that way of looking at it. It's a really good book, and it's one that we were asked to read as part of our curriculum for ministry. So I got a lot out of it. But she says that there are 9 steps to shifting to our higher self. The first step is to stop. So when I first felt triggered, I should have just stopped what I was doing. And then the next step, step 2, is to breathe. I should have taken some deep belly breaths or done some I think they call it box breathing now, where you breathe in fast, and then you breathe out very slowly. And then the third step is to ask for help. And asking for help can be asking your higher self for help. It could be asking a friend for help. It could be asking your spiritual leader for help. It could be asking a prayer partner for help. And then the fourth thing is to observe yourself. And I think this is probably one of the harder aspects of her steps to shift. She wants you to observe yourself in body and in heart and in mind. And what she means is that she wants you to look at yourself physically first, like what is hurting, what is coming up. Do you feel it in your gut? Do you feel it, in your back? Or is your chest getting tighter because you're so anxious? And continue with the breath to those parts of your body that might have that discomfort. And then the heart part is your emotions. What are you feeling? And are those feelings really related to what happened? And then the mind, the thoughts. We all know that our thoughts can get us in lots of trouble sometimes. And so what she says is that we are not ego. So we are not the ego. We have an ego, but we are not the ego. So we can observe it, and we can treat it as either a friend or a foe. That we can see it as an ally instead of the enemy, because what we resist persists, right? So if I'm seeing the ego as my enemy, I'm not looking at it from a perspective of higher consciousness. And she goes on to talk about how to identify and embrace the ego, to look for root causes of why you're feeling this way. And to me, that reminded me of what I used to do at PNC. We did what was called a 5 whys analysis. So you would ask why, why did this happen? And then you would give yourself an answer, and then you would say, well, why did that happen? And then you would give yourself another answer, and you continue to go. It could be 4 whys, it could be 6 whys, but it's called the 5 whys. You just continue to ask that question until you can't get any further. And then you know what your root cause is. Then you know what's really happening. And so when I did that for myself, after several hours of not doing that for myself, I realized that it had nothing to do with her. It didn't have anything to do with anything that we were talking about. It had to do with me. And I was able to see that and see that truth. And then I was able to work on forgiveness for myself and for my friend. The next step number 7, is to reframe the situation. So that's kind of what I did. I looked at it through the eyes of compassion and wisdom. And that's how we get to our Christ nature, right? Between love and wisdom is our Christ center. So compassion is another aspect of love. So when we reframe that situation in love, we can tell ourselves a new story. We can create something different so that we're not being the victim of what's happening, that things aren't being done to us, that we are able to translate that into something more positive. And then she goes into step number 8, to focus on something to be grateful for. What in this circumstance can I be grateful for? Well, the realization that it wasn't about me was really comforting for me. And I was able to be grateful for the fact that I learned that. I wasn't grateful that I experienced it, but I was grateful that I was able to learn the lesson after the experience. And then number 9, choose a spiritually intelligent response from your higher self. So it's going within and really looking at, what were you feeling? How were you feeling it? What was your root cause? And then what can you spiritually do to respond? Well, that's a lot of steps, right? When I was in that moment, I was not going to go through those 9 steps. It's good in theory, but it's a lot. But what I could have done was gone to my soul. And she talks about the soul as 4 steps, like 4 quick steps. So S is for stop. O is for observe. U is for understand. And L is a loving response. So taking all 9 of those steps and moving them down into 4, it makes it a lot easier for me to say, okay, I'm feeling something right now. Let's stop. Let's stop and breathe. Let's observe what's happening. Let's take what you're feeling and what you're thinking and really look at it from the observer's mind instead of from the mind of victim. And understand. Move through that information, figure out what your why is, figure out what the best reframing would be, and then come up with some kind of loving response. And sometimes that loving response might just be, this really triggered me right now, and I can't talk to you, so can we talk about this later? That would probably have been the most loving thing that I could say in that moment. It's not what I said, but I know now that I need to practice that. For me, this was a great lesson in how to not be in my ego. So when I talked about how I said that the Lenten booklet says Jesus let go of human ego, I understood then after that it wasn't talking just about the ego itself, that the ego is bad, but getting rid of that unhealthy ego, the part of you that is either underdeveloped or overdeveloped that creates the chaos in your life. Because we all know that our ego is our chaos maker, right? It is the healthy ego that can elevate us to our spiritual consciousness, but it is the unhealthy ego that gets us into that berserkiness. Just a couple final things. I don't know if all of you have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He wrote those needs in 1943. And at the time, it was pretty revolutionary. But I think today it's pretty commonly accepted that his hierarchy of needs starts with basic needs, that you need to be able to have the basic security, food, a sense of safety, basic, live without fear, live without lack. So knowing that you have what you need to get through each day. So he would say that getting to our higher self or getting to our healthy ego would not be on the lowest levels of his hierarchy, but it would be through self-actualization. And self-actualization is that highest level of his pyramid that he uses to describe the needs of people. So when we're in an unhealthy ego, we're thinking of it from that lower level. But when we are in a healthy ego, we can transcend that and move up higher. And that's where I think Paul and Imelda talk about how we can transcend the ego to our higher consciousness. We want to feel spiritually fulfilled, right? We want to reach fulfillment. And working with our 12 powers is one way to do that. Working with this model of stepping through a painful situation to shift to a higher level is another tool that we can use. And maybe just taking a breath, something as simple as that. Taking a breath and just stepping back for a moment and knowing that you're okay and they're okay and that there's some other reason why this might be happening. It was a huge lesson for me that I hope I don't repeat in the future. So I'm going to continue to work on creating a healthy ego by doing my meditation work, by doing my breath work, by journaling my feelings every day to get me to a better place and to heal those parts of me that still get triggered. And that's the hardest part, right? The healing. But we can do it because that's all that prayer and meditation and all the things that we do in unity are for, right? For healing our humanness and getting us to that divine oneness. So I want to thank you for letting me share that today, because that was a kind of difficult for me to talk about, but it also gave me great clarity of what I can do and hopefully what you can do when your ego gets in the way. So thank you.
The timing of your talk is very interesting to me, for me. Do you know what Dark Night of the Soul is? Yeah, I'm going through that. So like really getting that concept of like, we think that we have a soul and that we have or consciousness, but it's the other way around. We are consciousness and a soul, and we have a mind and body. So the concepts of that are dying right now for me. So I have this song called Unshakable Thought, and that I wrote a long time ago. A lot of my songs are now making sense. I once looked up the definition for eyes, because eyes are the windows to your soul, they say. And the definition that came up was global ministries. And I thought that was really cool. And so I feel that, for me anyways, the concept of remembering who I am, the soul, and that I'm not my mind, and to stop being controlled by the ego, the mind, so that I can be filled, so I can fill the mind with unshakable thought. swinging me high, swinging me low. Is this a storm or another rainbow? It lies underneath. Will I choose my peace or let those dark clouds pour down on me? I shall dance in the rain, find beauty in stains, smile when I wake, make memories each day. And then when I sleep, my mind shall breathe and reveal that life is already complete. Global ministries are the windows we're taught. So fill this gray matter with unshakable thought. Then lost time will be sweet. Each minute I'll keep stored in my heart for when I am weak. I can return to all that I've learned and give the best of me. Global ministries are the windows we're taught. So fill this gray matter with unshakable thought. Fill this gray matter with unshakable thought.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, let's do some announcements. The last meeting for the book study will take place today, immediately after service. Everyone is welcome to attend, and the topic is compassionate communication. Please see the information at the back of the room regarding Angie's concert on March 1st and 2nd. Or speak to Ken. Also at the back of the room is information about prayer chaplain training at Westlake Unity. Also on the 1st and 2nd of March, Michele will be able to give more information. Mark your calendars for March 10th. Immediately after service, join your friends for lunch at the Royal Buffet and Grill. Karen Malloy or Judy Stoynoff will answer your questions and will provide a sign-up sheet at the back of the room. And I think that's it. And now Michele will tend to any guests or...
All right, anybody here for the first time? I don't think so. You all look familiar to me. That's good. But if you're here for the first time on live stream, hello. Anybody that's here, we want to bless each other. And so we do our affirmation together. We bless you. We appreciate you. We behold the Christ in you. And we thank you for being here. Yes, definitely thank you. So this is the time where we do our offertory, where we look at the consciousness that we have raised today and how we might continue to raise that consciousness in the future through our gifts of generosity. So with that feeling of gratefulness, with that feeling of appreciation in our hearts for everything that we feel and do and have here at Unity of Medina, let us say our offertory prayer together. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I will receive. And we are grateful. So thank you.
I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. We are so blessed. We are so blessed. We are so grateful for all that we have. We are so blessed. We are so blessed. We are so grateful. We are so blessed.
We are truly blessed to be here in communion with one another, to have received such blessed gifts, to know that the prayers in the prayer box have been answered, and that we can see the truth for our world and peace in our time. We say thank you, God, for all of the blessings, for all of the gifts, for each and every heart and for the acceptance that we have. And we say, thank you, God. Thank you, God. Amen and amen. All right, well, thank you all for being here today and joining us. We will end in our fabulous circle and sing our closing songs.